It's Thursday, and you know what that means. That means it's time to ignite the dynamite the day after the dynamite. Welcome to Day After Dynamite. I'm Will Washington, but I'm not alone here, folks, because I am also joined by the one and only Miss Kate.
Hi. I'm so excited to join you.
I know, we haven't done a podcast together, and I guess we kind of have, in that we did the big holiday thing last year. I feel like that's the only time I ever actually did a podcast with you, though.
And my mom immediately had a crush on you. So, just saying. She was like, Will is cute. I was like, he's the best.
Way to make me blush on my own podcast. But thank you, Kate. And of course, it wouldn't be a Day After Dynamite.
Of course,
without a run.
How are you?
You're not Jeremy. Me.
And record time too.
You're not me.
There we go. Let me take my rightful spot in between the split screen here.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, everybody. It is record time. I saw the notification pop up on my Twitter that you were streaming from my Twitter. So I was like, oh, okay. Will's on. I missed last week. I was at the beach last week. And Phil Lindsay was here. You know, I'd like to talk to Phil. Unfortunately, your guest this week isn't as cool as Phil, but what can you do?
Rude. Here's the thing with Jeremy. He likes to take all the credit for quote unquote discovering me because I crushed reciting the pipe bomb on his show. And then he just tries and chops me down. Why did you say, Kate, you are the next chosen one just to bury me in booking? I hate it. I hate it, Jeremy. How dare you?
I'm a great booker.
It's basically, it's theory, right? Where, she's the chosen one.
Oh, that's mean.
But
mean. Can you call me McIntyre instead, please?
Yeah, that was the meanest thing anyone's ever said about Kate. That was much meaner than anything I've said about her.
How are you, Jeremy?
I am well. I was in a bubble today. I saw on my Twitter. I went and got trapped in a bubble, unlike in a different kind of bubble than the wrestling bubble. But I've had a good day. How about you, Will?
I have been pretty okay, especially considering I had a great time watching Dynamite last night. How did you enjoy Dynamite?
I thought it was not doing a Tony Khan bit here. I thought it was a tremendous show, one of the best shows they've ever done. Well, he gave me a shout out at the ROH press conference.
He did, yeah.
Tony and I are good friends now.
Yes.
That was a good show. It was a really good show, though. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too, and I'm excited to talk about it here.
I'll let you guys talk about it. I gotta do my run-in. Bless the Day After Dynamite community with my presence. Act like I actually do something on this channel when everybody else does the hard work, and I do absolutely nothing on this channel. Don't do that, Will. I mean, you do a great show. I've actually stepped my game up on this channel. I'm very proud of it.
You have. No, don't cut yourself down.
We're interviewing challenge stars. We're getting out of the wrestling business and going into the reality TV business, me and SB3. That's
no, you guys are making great content on Fightful.
Thank you. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Thank you, everybody. Bye, everybody. Even you, Kate, sometimes.
You're all right.
Bye, everybody. I almost hit end broadcast because I thought the show was over. That would have been really bad. I had my finger up there. It was up there. I was like, oh, bye. Let me end the broadcast.
You really do want to bury people.
You know what, though? I'll tell you, in case, I don't think people know this, but if anybody wants to know why there were 2 uploads of the Forbidden Door Media Scrum on the Fightful channel, that's because that's what I did, right? Where I went into it on my other device just to make sure everything was working because I had it streaming from one device. I went into it on my other device and I'm like, okay, everything's good. And I went to back out and hit end broadcast and I'm like, oh shit. And everybody, and midway through somebody talking, I forget who was actually at the podium just kind of doing their thing and talking, but I'm like, oh fuck, I just ended the Fightful broadcast.
I think I've done that once before, early in the StreamYard days. I have not done that since then, but yes, I moved my mouse over to end broadcast and was about to hit it Fortunately, there's the other little pop up to like, are you sure you want to end the broadcast? And maybe I would have caught myself, but behind the scenes,
I guess for my mobile device, it didn't do it. Like,
it doesn't.
No, because
because
because what I did was I had my my iPad does the main streaming, and then I was just checking in on it on my phone. So I logged in on my phone, make sure everything was good, and then I went to back out, and again I hit end broadcast, and it just ended. And I'm like, oh crap! And I'm like, but my iPad was mounted on a tripod in front of like all the wrestlers doing their talking, and so I'm like kind of army crawling over to like my iPad so I don't get in anybody else's shot, but I'm like, I have to restart stream. But like I actually had to like remake the stream. And so
after you end the broadcast, you have to reset up everything.
Right. So I like had to like reset it up on my phone and then army crawl over to the iPad, go into the stream.
See, these are the scoops we get here on After Dynamite. When I was on 2 weeks ago, Will gave the scoops of how he didn't realize Swerve was winning the titles, and now we get the Forbidden Door press conference.
Forbidden Door press conference. Anybody who like, if you happen to watch the official AEW one and you see like a hand slip into the shot, that's me trying to like get my iPad back up and streaming again. That is what happened there.
Well, there you go.
The first time I ever used StreamYard, I learned the day of, and it was for NFL draft.
I can just do that to Kate, just to pop myself. It's great. I don't even know. Is she on the StreamYard? Is she?
Jen, you scotch.
It's still funny to me. Still hilarious.
But it was very, very scary to be doing NFL draft coverage for a major media outlet, learning how to use the software for the first time, and knowing they were like, just leave studio and on broadcast. Make sure you keep those two things straight. And every time I went to leave studio, I was like, am I doing the right thing? It's nerve-wracking. People don't realize.
It is. Well, y'all have a great show. Enjoy talking about the Dynamite put over.
Two can play at that game.
That was good. I like that. Good job. Y'all have a good show. Bye, everybody. I'm not going to click in broadcast. Bye.
Bye, Jeremy.
All right. So, and they're talking about in the chat, they said, Will also hinted at Trios titles the other day, too.
Little breadcrumbs, baby.
I mean, look, sometimes I got the shits. And,
sometimes what you have is a full-on crouton, and when you leave breadcrumbs, you're actually being very restrained.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? Because like sometimes if you get me going, I could just like spill a whole bunch of shit. But I am very careful because
get Will drunk sometime,
because I need to. And the part of it is that I very much have people I'm close with that I very much love, and it's not even talking about just the people I'm related to, but just in general, there's people that I know that that I need to protect at times, and so sometimes things aren't for a report. It's just because there's fun things on the horizon. I'm not a reporter. I am not obligated to report any information I get, let alone all of it.
You're not even trying to be an air quotes journalist.
Right, I am not. And so that's the one thing I tell people all the time, where they're like, how can you because I've done work for AEW, right? And so it's no secret that I would not do anything I haven't been paid for. So like when somebody says to me, well, how could you do work for a company and then report on them? I go, because I'm not a reporter. And I've never claimed to be, and I will never claim to be. So that
people just love to call us that because they like to be angry.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's the thing is like they're like and that's the thing is Fightful makes it very they draw a distinction. Sean is a reporter. Sean falls on what his work that he does falls under journalism. What Jeremy does, he reports, that falls under journalism. I am a personality here at Fightful. So I am here to just talk about stuff that I like talking about, and that's how that goes. But that said, like I said, sometimes I have had reports before, but in general, I do not consider myself a reporter, and I don't feel that my content needs to adhere to journalistic standards. And that is
Way more fun.
It is, right?
It's so much more fun.
Right.
Having to write about it.
And that's it. And here's the thing: the times the few reports I've had are the ones where I have the least amount of fun. I don't know how I could not put my name to a lot of stuff, mainly because of the fact that the stuff I've put my name to has had angry people in my inbox who it can sometimes relate to.
Sure, of course.
So I'm just like, you know what? I don't even want my name on that report. But either way, yes, the trios titles, I'm glad they're here. I'm glad that all is finally ready to go. Yes, there's some more details coming on that should be kind of fun. Because who are the trios going to be? Notice they said a trios tournament. And notice they said that the winner will be crowned at All Out, which means that this is all I will say on this matter, since people keep asking me about a little tiny thing I tweeted last night in a reply to another tweet. Think about the fact that in order to get to the finals of the tournament at All Out, things have to begin beforehand.
That's it.
That's it. That's all we need on that one. And so I am looking forward to All Out. I don't get to go to All Out this year, and that's a shame because I've been to All Out every year that I could go to All Out. I obviously didn't go during the pandemic. I mean, pandemic's still going, but what I mean is pandemic era wrestling.
Right.
I did not get to go during that, so I am a little sad, but I just went to Forbidden Door. Look, there's a poster right behind me for it. I did just go to Forbidden Door. I feel like I just did Chicago.
We're just gonna get and then we should have an investment property in Chicago that we do.
I know, right? We should. And like at this point, for the amount of wrestling shows in Chicago, there should just be like a I don't know. It's like a Fightful timeshare or something where like everybody just kind of goes and stays.
That's it.
For various shows.
Airbnb, but Fightful only. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that way, because I'll say that the Airbnb that Denise and I shared for Forbidden Door, it was cool. I mean, it was with 2 bedrooms. One of them had a bunk bed. True story. Originally, the original plans for that were for me, Denise, and Sean to share that one, and Sean and I were gonna have bunk beds. And
just the movie Step Brothers playing in my head.
I know. I had so many ideas for bits and gags, and then Sean ended up not coming. So it's
Sean
like, okay, well,
bailed.
Now I have this bunk bed to myself.
Did you choose top or bottom bunk? See, I'm here to ask the real questions.
I chose bottom because
you're
by the time
such an adult, you're so boring.
I know. It was because by the time I thought about it, I'm like, no, take the top bunk. But by the time I ever got to sleep any of the nights we stayed there, it was super late, and it was literally just like a walk in and pass out kind of thing. And like the idea of even trying to climb was just way too much for me.
Hard pass.
All right. So don't forget about super chats. Don't forget about Humper chats. Hey, don't forget about leaving us a thumbs up right here. It's right there. You can see it. If you're on YouTube, it's right there in your bottom left corner. It's right over there. Just leave a thumbs up. And if you don't want to leave a thumbs up, don't do anything. But definitely leave us those thumbs up. Matt Stone said, I was at Dynamite last night. I was even on TV during the Starks promo. Great crowd, great show. Love that.
It was a hot crowd last night.
It was a hot crowd. I will say that.
That promo was beautiful.
Massachusetts turns out for wrestling. Because last Friday, SmackDown was in Boston. Saturday, Ring of Honor was in Lowell, Massachusetts. Wednesday, Worcester, Massachusetts had Dynamite. And
ROH was just in Lowell.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Lowell is like maybe 2 hours away from Boston, if I'm not mistaken. But I know Worcester and Boston are only like half an hour apart, right? So this isn't that far. As a matter of fact, I'll say this is kind of a better venue than don't they normally run like the Agganis Center in Boston? I want to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Agganis Arena. Let me see. Agganis Arena in Boston. That's right. I know my arenas.
You do. Look at you.
Orion Ben 666 says, we were speculating about Hobbs and Starks on Grab City the other day. I think all of us went not like that at the same time last night. How? All right. Let's do it. Let's talk about the show. Show kicked off with the All Elite Wrestling Interim World Championship on the line. Jon Moxley versus Rush. And Rush, accompanied by Jose the Assistant. This was a match that the second it was announced at Death Before Dishonor, I think people were really excited about, were really looking forward to. And they did not disappoint. Now, granted, people had the question that I think a lot of us had. What exactly qualified Rush for a world title shot? I don't fucking know. But especially in a company that has at least gone out of its way to make sure that most title shots are explained. That usually it's you're either ranked or you have been chosen by the champion. And this time they didn't go with either. They were just like, nah, Rush is getting a title shot. And he got a title shot. And but this was a really, really fun match. It was a little bit slower before the break. And they got to blood really fast. But by the second half of the match, when we got after the commercial break, this was just balls to the wall fire. I thought they made Rush look like $1 million. They made him look like somebody who can hang with Jon Moxley. The finish came with Moxley hitting a full-on paradigm shift, not just the dirty deeds, and Rush kicked out, and then Moxley had to then apply the choke to take him out. The other big thing here that I continue to appreciate is that the clubbing elbows to the side of the head are officially just like the Blackpool Combat Club signature move. Like if you're in the Blackpool Combat Club, that's a thing you do. Kate, what did you think of this match?
So I agree with you that if I was ranked, I'd be real annoyed that Rush just gets a title shot. And I think in general, and this got answered after, I was kind of like, can we get a story for Mox to be in with this title? Like I feel like because we had Forbidden Door, Blood and Guts, and ROH, like basically their return true pay-per-view, so close together, it was like there was only so much movement you can make with certain stories. But I thought as far as in-ring, this was fantastic. I think a lot of people learned about Rush through ROH because he's just done such great work there, and a lot of people's eyes were opened, I think, on Saturday. And I just loved the match. I loved when Mox was bleeding, him like licking his hand with the blood on it. Just like, what a badass move. I also liked his sell of the way that he fell asleep in the finish. I thought was really, really, really strong. And he's just a little cannonball, man. He was all over that arena, but very excited to see Jon Moxley now getting a kind of a proper story, it looks like, coming out of this match.
I'll say
a fun opener to Dynamite. They're pretty good about opening with like high energy, really fun matches to get you hooked.
Well, I am a big fan of the way Moxley's been presented as champion, mainly because it's just been nonstop. He has not missed an episode of Dynamite since becoming champion, and it is when you think about what he's done just back to back to back to back, it was like he won the title. 3 days later, he's in Blood and Guts. 1 week later, he wrestled Konosuke Takeshita. And then I feel like I'm missing one because I know he had the tag match with, what was it? Against Best Friends, tagging with
Garcia.
Wheeler Yuta.
Or Garcia.
Yeah.
Yuta.
Yeah, he
the other
with
side
Yuta.
of that feud.
Yes. And here he is now wrestling Rush. And it's just like Moxley was like, nah, I'm champion, but you're going to see me every freaking week. And I am going to be in that ring doing what I do. And then, of course, Brody King was the other one. He had the match against Brody for the title.
From the...
Thank you, Orion Ben 666. He's just been nonstop. And like, it almost surprises me that there's no Moxley match announced for next week. But I imagine we're going to get one because this seems to be Moxley's MO right now. and he continues to work the indies, and he's got a GCW title match,
and like, a baby.
Yeah, like he has just been going as hard as, you know, Moxley had that year in 2016 where he worked more matches than anybody in pro wrestling. Moxley was just going nonstop. He was working the house shows, and then and he was mostly headlining the B circuit of house shows. And then Roman Reigns got suspended, and they were like, Dean, can you also work the other circuit of house shows? And he just went nonstop. This is a guy who just, you give him the ability to work, and he's going to work. He's going to do it. And for me to see the champion get to do that is such a departure from, you know, Hangman we saw on occasion. Hangman, usually we saw him in a promo, and then the matches were very rare. But that just isn't how Moxley operates. Moxley is like, I don't care if I'm champion or not. If I'm booked, I'm coming to work. And that's great. But Bryan's the same way. Bryan is very much a guy who, if he is booked on a show, he wants to work. And so having Bryan back is also going to make things really interesting. But yes, you're right. After the match was over, we all kind of knew this was where it was heading. That ultimately the Blackpool Combat Club and Jericho Appreciation Society stuff had to culminate in the leaders of both going head to head. And that's what we got here, was Chris Jericho then makes his way out with the newest member of the Jericho Appreciation Society, Anna Jay. I thought Anna Jay was good here. I thought that her energy was, she had a lot of fire there. I forgot that she actually had such a great presence as a heel. She's been a babyface for so long because obviously the whole Dark Order turned face after Brody passed away. But I forgot that she was very good at this as a heel. And I am excited to see more of her there. Yeah, I liked her there. I liked, you know, I know it got people up in arms as if they haven't seen this before, but I saw a bunch of people on Twitter harping on the "appreciate us" line.
It's so good.
Have you not been watching the show? Like, this is a thing that they do. So
there was something in the cadence this week that people understood that it was an acknowledge me parody. Like,
right.
I think the way it was delivered for whatever reason this week was just more connected. But
yeah,
to your point about Moxley defending the title so much and wrestling so much, I think that's really important with an interim title too, to make it feel legitimate, because it already feels like a step down too, right? So if you're going to have a substitute title or whatever, I think it's really important that it be very present in the show, because it's already the diet version, right? Right?
Yeah, and I agree with that. Although this promo really did what it needed to do to establish that, you know, Moxley said, and he was like, get the interim crap out of here. He's like, as far as I'm concerned, I am the champion. And I've appreciated little details like that, because Regal's done the same thing. Whenever Regal's on commentary for Jon Moxley matches, he won't say interim champion. Regal is like, this is the AEW world champion. And I like that the Blackpool Combat Club, like as a whole, acknowledges, as far as we're concerned, our guy won this belt. He is the champion. We don't care what the deal was. This is the champ. And I like that Moxley sees it that way. And that it's really just, as far as the official everything is concerned. But we had Chris Jericho issue the challenge. He noted that it's been 2.5 years since he went for his return match. And it is fitting that the return match is against the guy he lost it to. Actually, kind of props on the fact that to that point, I feel like Chris Jericho versus Jon Moxley felt at one point like the biggest match AEW could have put on. That in February of 2020, when all of that was happening, that was a big... When did that feud officially kick off? I want to say it kicked off the night after Thanksgiving. It was the night before Thanksgiving. It was the Thanksgiving episode of Dynamite.
The go home to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the go home to Thanksgiving. 2019 was the first time Jericho and Moxley had any confrontation as far as the title was concerned. And it went from end of November till the end of February. So we're talking 3 whole months of a feud. You know, we had Moxley getting the car, all of that stuff, which if they bring up the car again, I feel like that's one thing I would love to see, because I appreciate it for a few weeks. That, oh, and they're saying what arena was that show at? That's an easy one because every Thanksgiving show Dynamite does is in Chicago, but this was before Wintrust, so that one would have been at the Sears Center, which is now the Now Arena.
There's like a 57% chance if you just say Chicago. It's at least happened in one of those. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, that's one of those ones that's a layup because it's always going to be that's a tradition now for AEW is to do the Thanksgiving Dynamite in Chicago. But now it's Wintrust Arena that they're doing that one at, which is a better fit for it. That said, Jericho makes the challenge. Moxley accepts, but he's tired of this Chris Jericho. And he's like, God, I hate you. And he's like, but I liked Moxley here because he brought it around. He's like, I hate you, but I've respected you because as far as you're concerned, you've been one of the GOATs. But I don't want to face this Chris Jericho, the sports entertainment crap Chris Jericho. If you're going to face me in 2 weeks at Quake by the Lake, in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the Target Center, he wants the Lionheart Chris Jericho. Ooh.
Yeah. So a few things with this. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But like, as far as the Anna Jay stuff, I had a bit of a different reaction to you. I feel like this doesn't feel like who she is. Like this. One thing I always appreciated about Anna Jay was I felt like she was kind of a badass without like not a shoving it down your throat kind of way. Like she didn't have to wear like spiked gear and black makeup or whatever to like show you that. But I always just felt like she was kind of a badass. This felt much more two-dimensional to me. And I'm really concerned that the booking is going to fall to the wayside of like what they did kind of with Penelope and the bunny. Like that makes me really, really nervous because this to me is reading a lot like that. And I have some other complaints too that we can get into later, but this, I don't know. I liked the energy. I felt like it came across as a little bit inauthentic to me. But I am glad to see more women on my TV anytime. Right. So
I feel like, so to me, I've always felt, and this is going to be true pretty much everywhere, and we'll talk about it in the next segment. But every great babyface to me in pro wrestling is rooted in a great heel. And that has just kind of always been true, that you can't really look at any successful babyface in the history of pro wrestling without them having had some kind of heel run that it started with that the fans just eventually gravitated to. I feel like Anna had a little bit of her heel run ripped from her, in that, and rightfully so, right? Like there was no way you could keep the Dark Order heels at that stage. But I did feel like she was getting her legs under her as a performer, because any performer will tell you, right, that working heel gives you a little bit more comfort on the mic because you can explore certain things that being a babyface doesn't give you a chance to explore. You don't get to toy with the fans. You don't get to really explore catchphrases as well as you can with being a heel, and a lot of things get to come of that. I thought that 2 years ago when she was working heel, she choked out Brandy and really got to put the Queenslayer over as, something devastating, something to take out the other women on the roster. And I wanted to see more of that from Anna, and she didn't really get to finish. And I feel like I want to see her get to explore this side of her. I think that it's hard because I kind of know where it's going. But again, this is one of those things that and
I'm not even against an Anna Jay heel. I think that could be really great, but this presentation of it to me did not feel like the Britney Spears "Oops, I Did It Again" get up. Didn't feel like Anna Jay to me. She didn't.
I thought it was like almost perfectly obnoxious, and that to me is another way to kind of get under people's skin, is when something is just kind of in your face, and I feel like she very much was. Although I appreciate you bringing up "Oops, I Did It Again," but...
which is also a fair take. I just feel like even the best bad guys, right? There's something that you can connect to that I say that's authenticity. I think it's the part of a heel that you can identify as being a real person, and she did not come across as like a real person to me in this change. Like, this felt like she was playing something rather than leaning into what could be a really great. This didn't feel like a Queen Slayer, and I think I want to see heel Queen Slayer Anna Jay rather than Tay Conti's friend Anna Jay. Like, it's still kind of read as that to me yesterday, but I will leave room and patience for it.
I'm also glad to see Ty and Anna back together, because I guess by the record books, they haven't been together since just like this past March, but that's not true. Like, officially, they haven't been together since like December. And the reason I bring that part up is because AEW had taped a whole bunch of Dark in December, and then it was at the... what show was that? The New Year Smash show. They taped a whole bunch of Dark the day before, and a lot of that content they held on to until like 3 months later, and they ended up running some of those matches 3 months later. And one of the matches they ran wasn't Anna Jay and Ty Conti tag match, but if you looked at that, it was like they actually haven't been together in a long time. And I like that somebody caught that I sneezed. I hit the mute button.
Bless you.
But I still appreciate the bless you in the chat. But it's been interesting. They haven't really been together all year, and they got to bring that group back together because, I don't know, they're a good duo. And if Ty has to be heel by proxy of being tied to Sammy Guevara, then in that regard, and I know that's probably one of your least favorite things going right now, but we'll talk about that here shortly.
It was just that she was probably the most improved wrestler of last year, and then what they did with it was have her get harassed by Dan Lambert for 5 months. Like, they didn't really capitalize on the momentum of it. But I actually saw Tay Conti work heel at like a house show at Cocoa Beach in Florida, like 5 years ago. And she was so fantastic as a heel. So when she turned, I felt like I had this little secret with myself that I knew, which was that she can actually be a really great heel in the ring. She was doing some really, really fun stuff, and definitely understood even then, before she was even on NXT TV for her brief stint, that like she definitely understood how to be a heel storyteller. So I'm very much looking forward to that side of her. I think it'll be really fun once that's like expressed in the ring.
Was that the same one TK was at? Because Tony Khan has mentioned time and time again that he was at an NXT house show where he first saw Ty Conti and realized that was somebody that he was interested in. And then he ended up, when he saw she was a free agent, he like immediately wanted to snatch her up for that very reason. Were you at a house show with Tony Khan?
Not to my knowledge. This was in Cocoa Beach, so I would assume he did one probably closer to like a Jacksonville-ish loop, maybe. But
yeah, probably Jacksonville loop. But either way, it's probably the same loop doing the same.
Let's make it up. Let's make it up right now. I was definitely at a house show with Tony Khan. We both saw something special in Tay Conti, and we bonded over 8 years ago.
Yeah.
That is all a lie.
So the next segment had, I'd say, got the most chatter of the entire show, because a lot went down in a very short amount of time. And it was the thing everybody thought was going to happen, but I think I saw this playing out till All Out. I didn't realize they were just going to do all of this in the span of like 5 minutes. But I'm actually kind of glad they did. We started with the entrance of Dan Hausen. That led to a video package for Ricky Starks. Phenomenal video package. It was almost enough to, I don't know, get him cheered. And so it reminded me a lot of the video package they ran for MJF back in December at the Long Island show, And so it's Ricky Starks versus Dan Hausen. Match goes a minute. But it goes a minute, but Ricky Starks had a little bit of neck issue in that 1 minute, but he ends up soundly defeating Dan Hausen. Beats him 1, 2, 3. But again, Dan Hausen happens to be tied to somebody that Ricky Starks is tied to, so we all kind of knew where this was going. But like I said, and as a matter of fact, the crowd was already chanting for it. When Ricky grabs the mic and he said, you know what? I've got a little more left in me. I want to defend this title again to anybody who's back there. And the crowd starts chanting, "We want Hook." And so I almost thought they weren't going to deliver. Like, oh, let's tease it and string this along a little bit more till it's time. But Hook's music hit. Big pop. There's no pop like the crowd chanting for somebody and then they get what they were asking for. That's one of my favorite pops. So for them to be chanting, "We want Hook, we want Hook," and then as soon as the little opening of Hook's music hits, crowd goes wild. And Ricky accepts the challenge. Title's on the line. Hook and Ricky have another exchange, but Ricky's kind of nursing the neck the whole time, which allowed Hook to get Ricky in the jaws of defeat, taps out Ricky in what was an impressive minute 31. And the reason that's impressive is because the match that took place before was a minute 30. And so literally by just 1 second, this match was longer. And, but we have a new FTW champion, Hook. He has secured his birthright as the FTW champion. He took the gold from Taz. This was clearly the plan, at least as far back as a few weeks ago when Hook was interviewed by Lexi Nair, and she mentioned going after gold, and Hook implied he was going to go after some gold. Some thought he was going after the TNT title, but there's no way in hell he was going to be facing Wardlow. He went for it, and he's got the FTW title. What did you think of this portion of the show, Kate?
I'm just going to pull this up. I know it's not a super chat, but this segment was called "Kate Was Right All Along." Yes, I've been predicting this for months, and I've also been saying that Ricky Starks is going to be your breakout star of the year. I think it's too late in the year for people to be realizing that, but I'm glad people are coming around to this idea. This segment was pretty brilliant from front to back for a few reasons. My only complaint is I think there was a lot of juice in Starks versus Hook that they could have tapped into. And they still might revisit that at some point. Like Ricky Starks could go on some downfall and it could be Hook's fault. Like there's plenty of booking options there, but in my head, that was like a best out of 3 over the course of 8 weeks or whatever. But here's like what was so incredible about it to me. I've said this a few times and I'll say it again. Stick with me on it, because I'm not saying Ricky Starks is as good as Bret Hart, and I'm not saying he's as good as Shawn Michaels, but I'm saying as far as in-ring strengths go, Ricky Starks has both of the best parts of those guys. Like, Shawn Michaels is the only person I've ever seen look like he was trying to get back over a rope in a Royal Rumble, right? And his charisma for days, like all of the character commitment that a Shawn Michaels had, I see in Ricky Starks. It's so obvious, like how he's just dying to get out of every 3 count. He's dying to apply any hold that he can. Like that part feels very Shawn Michaels to me. His ring IQ and the efficiency that he has in the ring of no move is wasted. Like everything has an intent behind it. That reads as very Bret to me. That reads as a guy who went and studied his Bret Hart fundamentals and was like, I'm not leaving anything, no stone is unturned, and I'm not doing anything superfluous in the ring. And that combination, when you have someone who's so character driven and charismatic with those in-ring smarts, is a really, really special wrestler in modern wrestling, in my opinion. So, with this segment in particular, what I found so incredible was Hook is like a special type of over, where he was like kind of meme over, and then he turned out to be really great, and now everybody wants to cheer for him, and they also want to cheer for him in a really playful way, which to me always reads as like super enthusiastic. So to go from facing that guy, but still getting your own cheers and transitioning to the point where he was made such a babyface by what Hobbs did to him. Hobbs, who's also likable, a heel, but a likable heel. Like, I think people might miss how difficult of a bridge that is, or a gap that is to bridge, and to have done so organically, like to go from facing one of the most playfully over guys in the company to delivering this promo that read very real. That line of "I turned leather and metal into gold" was like just beautifully said.
Oh yeah.
And then to walk away being the biggest babyface from that segment after, I thought was just such impressive work and way more difficult than people realize. What they accomplished in 3 minutes of in-ring action to the end of that segment was so well done. And my God, that spear of Ricky Starks lays people out.
It's a really beautiful spear because of the way he like throws himself so deep into his opponents. It's phenomenal. I thought that one of the most effective pieces of all of this, and I'm sorry you guys in Worcester, Massachusetts didn't get to experience this, but Taz is very effective in making sure that all of this is sold properly, because I thought that him not liking the idea of Ricky defending the title again and being kind of put off by that. He's like, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden it's Hook. Who the hell does Taz root for, right? It's like my son versus my protege. Well, what do I do here? This is Team Taz imploding. And then it's like, okay, congratulations. That's my son. He got the title. You know, Ricky put up a good fight. You know, they fist bumped. Everything was good there. And then when Hobbs turned on Ricky, and my God, Hobbs turning on Ricky. First off, the memes have been beautiful.
Perfect.
I knew somebody was going to do it. Ricky! And I'm so glad I finally got it. That was good. But, I mean, the way Hobbs clubbed him was just so brutal, especially having watched Ricky nursing his neck in the last 2 matches, right? So, like, the way Hobbs clubbed him was like, oh my God, what the hell? And
he attacked his weakness.
His weakness. And Taz going, Hobbs, what did you do? Like, the Hobbs, like Taz is now, my group just literally imploded as I just watched in front of my eyes. And there was little things here where, you know, we could talk about what exactly was Hobbs' motivation for such, but I feel like you already saw it and you heard it, where Ricky's cutting this promo and he's very passionate and he's dropping a lot of truths. You know, he mentioned the whole, I deserve more than 40 seconds. And, you know, he talked about it wasn't a string of bad luck. It was a string of bad timing. And then when he says, and you know what, and me and Hobbs, and then Hobbs clubs him immediately.
Yes.
It was as if to say, like, you don't get to speak for me. And he would like, Hobbs was okay until he spoke for him. And once he dropped Hobbs' name, that's when Hobbs clubbed him. And then he hit him with the spine buster. So I'm hoping that's elaborated on a little bit more. But all of this.
Great pro wrestling.
Guess what, guys? Oh, by the way, first match, I give an A to this here.
Oh, yeah.
And this is everything encompassed from, because this isn't me just saying this from the perspective of, and if people can't figure out what I'm doing, I'm also somewhat stalling because I realized I didn't have the S graphic queued. But I'll
say first segment for me was an A-. In ring wise was an A+, probably, but just because the lack of story and justification for why he was getting a title shot, that makes it an A- for me.
Yeah, for me it gets an A because at the end of the day, I just love pro wrestling.
That's fair. That's completely fair.
At the end of the day, if you just give me 2 wrestlers that I like, and make them wrestle, I will.
That's awesome.
There's not much more I need than that. But as far as
for a title, I need it. For a title,
as far as the last segment is concerned. Now, keep in mind, this is not a match rating. This is me rating the FTW title defense, the 2 title defenses followed by the promo afterward. Folks, this gets the much lauded S tier. Yes, this was phenomenal stuff. I was very happy with just everything that went down. I felt like Hook got to become we got to capitalize on everything that's gone on with Hook since last year, but we also got to elevate Starks in a way that he hasn't been elevated yet. That he moved up into being almost a top tier babyface almost immediately. Hobbs looked menacing. Hobbs looked more menacing than he's ever looked, especially when you look at, we've talked to Hobbs on Grapsity. We've talked about his physique. We've talked about how much he transformed himself over time. And I feel like the way that the camera had him over Ricky Starks and the way he's standing over him, and he just looked like a menacing force. I thought Starks got to look good, and the way he clubbed the neck, beautiful shit. And
this was
I worry
perfect pro wrestling. Like
I worry about Ricky Starks' neck. I know people who are like afraid of hitting their finishers on Starks because of his neck history. Like there's stuff with that, but beautiful stuff. I was very pleased with how all of this went down.
And to your point, like the behind the scenes of that, right, feels like Ricky lost his title, but he graduated. Like that's great pro wrestling when the person who loses feels like they're moving up and the person who gets the title now is like made by that. Like that's the most ideal situation that you can get from a pro wrestling situation, I think. And like a beautifully set up story between Hobbs and Starks to boot coming out of this. Like what more do you want from 10 minutes on your television? I don't know.
Yes. And so the other thing too is I feel like a lot of things for All Out on this show became very clear, and I like that a lot. We had next match was Sammy Guevara, accompanied by Ty Conti, taking on Dante Martin with his, I guess we all kind of know that his real life girlfriend, Sky Blue. I honestly would have been fine with Dante winning this, but I recognize why he didn't. This was the first time we had seen Sammy Guevara compete in a while, and Dante Martin talked about that. He talked about how, all Sammy does is his vlogs and his travel and all that, but Dante's here week in, week out, doing what he does best. Dante is getting good, by the way. His presence on the mic in these backstage promos is so much better than it was a year ago. He has this intensity. The goatee is like working for him, and it has increased his intimidation factor. He comes off so much more just intentional than he ever did. And so he gets in there with Sammy Guevara, and the whole match is basically spots, and it's fun spots. But mostly it was Dante outworking Sammy and beating Sammy at his own game. And at every turn, Sammy thought he had Dante. Dante had a counter until Dante ultimately was distracted by Ty. That allowed Sammy to catch him with the GTH 1, 2, 3. Then Sammy was going to go for a little bit more. Sky Blue tried to stand up for Sammy. This led to Ty then attacking Sky Blue. We then had a run-in from Eddie Kingston and Ruby Soho and Ortiz, evening the odds. But then Anna Jay was out there as well. So the feud continues, but at least we've kind of, I feel like, finally moved on from Jericho and Sammy, and we did transition Jericho and Eddie, and transition to Sammy and Eddie, which I'm much more cool with and much more willing to see. I know you had some thoughts on this because I follow you on Twitter, so I know what thoughts to prepare you for, Kate. I've
had some time. I've gotten some sleep. I'm a little cooled off by it, but
the match itself for me, by the way, was it's a solid B minus. And part of it for me was just I enjoyed Dante getting to show out, and that it was really just a mistake that cost him the match. But I did enjoy what we got up until that point. But what did you think?
So I thought, I'll start with the in-ring. I thought the in-ring was really good. Like, I think we always say like that styles make matches. They're kind of like different enough, but also at each other's worlds enough where like, was it kind of spot festy? Yeah. Is a spot fest fun sometimes? Sure. Like it was pretty good. It was at this point where I realized how exhausted I am from the trope of like every woman that we saw on TV minus the women's title match, which was in the 9:30 slot, needed a man to get on TV. And I'm okay with that trope in situations where it feels authentic. Ruby and Eddie feel so authentic to me. Like that feels very real. Because it sounds like it is real. It sounds like they were real life friends, which is cool. But every other woman who was on television needed a man to get there. And while I like seeing women on my television more, been complaining about it for months, like anybody who knows me knows that it's my biggest gripe with the company. But it just, Sky Blue hasn't really been winning matches. Like the only reason Sky Blue was in that position was because they were dating. And the only reason Sammy and Tay are like paired together is because they're dating. And the only reason Anna Jay is there is because she's Tay's friend. So I'm just tired of the same trope getting repeated in a way that it just makes it feel like women are either accessories and like can't build feuds on their own, or like I'm kind of tired of this idea that women have to earn screen time because they sign the same contracts as everybody else, right? So
we got a super chat from Zach that kind of said the opposite, where he says the Dante Sammy match was built around the Ruby Ty feud. Dante and Sammy were the accessories.
I mean,
I do feel
then
like
let Ruby and Tay have a match.
I can say that that I do feel that Sammy has in this particular feud does kind of feel like the accessory to Ty more than Ty feeling like the accessory to Sammy. And that the bigger picture here is the fact that I would say the bigger picture here is Ty versus Ruby.
Sure. Put that on TV first then.
Now, when are we going to get the second match? I don't know. That's I know some things about that and why that is. And there's pieces of it that I see, there's pieces of it that I don't. But not one of those things I can really, without talking to a couple more people, divulge here. But I'll say that and that's me being reasonable to the Fightful journalistic standards, and that there is a big due diligence thing we do here where we hear a lot of hearsay at Fightful. I said this on Twitter yesterday. A lot of hearsay. Until we can kind of tie things to multiple sources, reporting it is irresponsible.
Correct.
So there's that.
The other part of this that I didn't like was that Dante can't count, because we just saw Conti and Anna Jay partner, and he brings out one woman with him. So if you're doing that to try and even the numbers game, you need to learn to count. But
well, that was the person he could find.
I guess maybe pick someone who's winning matches, like perhaps somebody that's ranked and your girlfriend.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I am into the idea of Sammy versus Eddie Kingston. I have a hunch it's gonna be a mixed tag at All Out, or if not at All Out, then around All Out. But my guess is at All Out. I don't know where that puts Ortiz in all of this, but at least he's still getting to do a little something.
I also am just so annoyed by the booking that Eddie Kingston didn't beat Chris Jericho. Like, that doesn't feel resolved to me until Homicide and Eddie Kingston put Jericho in a body bag at some point. Like, that he was so vicious about wanting to murder Chris Jericho, and Jericho won.
I know.
I'm like, that's not done for me. It's done right now, but that's not done for me.
So I was in a little bit of disagreement with that last week because I recognized that they did want to get to Chris Jericho versus Moxley for the title.
Sure.
You can't get there with Jericho losing. But I feel like if you're going to have Jericho win, then it should have just been definitive. It should have just been like, I thought the opposite. I didn't like Eddie getting anything back on Chris Jericho. I feel like if you're going to end a feud, end it. Even if the heel wins, end it. And I thought that if Jericho was going to win, he should have just won and we moved on. But the fact that he won, but then Eddie still got one more up on him, I don't know. I thought that this was the perfect time to just transition to Eddie and Sammy because at the end of the day, you had a perfect way for Jericho to win because he's moving on to the title and do it because Sammy got thrown off the top of the Blood and Guts cage. Sammy has a reason to want revenge on Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston and Sammy, and a best way to do that would be for Sammy to cost Eddie the one thing that he's been trying to get this whole time, which is to put Chris Jericho away. Perfect transition. You didn't have to do anything else. I didn't like the follow-up on that. It should have just been moving on, and Chris Jericho moves on to the title.
I will say the payoff from Blood and Guts is so beautiful here because, like you said, there's just naturally a story between Sammy and Eddie. I think Sammy has been in a spot where he has... a lot of the booking has been on the company for this latest Sammy heel run and not on Sammy himself. So I think Eddie Kingston making everything feel so personal is such a perfect person for Sammy to immediately get in a feud with. And, that the booking of the end of Blood and Guts between that and him and Claudio having an issue, but not one that's so big it needs to be resolved right this second, I think is so perfectly done and we can't underestimate how much orchestration goes into an ending like that.
Yeah. Nathan says, please tell me you guys have seen the Boys in the Hood Hobbs turn mashup on Twitter. That was what I was referencing earlier with the Ricky. Yeah, I love that. That was very, very good. So the next segment was JB, Jungle Boy. We get to hear from him for the first time since Road Rager, where he was betrayed by Christian Cage. He took the concerto, but he is here now to answer back at all of the things that we saw did I say Jericho? Christian Cage. All the things Christian Cage had said about Jungle Boy. We finally got to hear his response. I'm one of the few people who thought turning Luchasaurus was a bad idea, and I'm glad we're back here. Mainly because I know a lot of wrestling purists hate Luchasaurus. I hear it all the time from especially old wrestlers with podcasts. They're always talking about how, Luchasaurus, he's such a big man, but why doesn't he wrestle like a big man? There's a way big men are supposed to wrestle, and he doesn't do it. Why is he doing flips? Why is he doing kicks? Why is he doing leg slaps? Why does he wrestle like that? Big men aren't supposed to do that. There's not a single wrestler's podcast you probably haven't heard that from. But I'm not an old wrestler. I am a viewer. And the one thing that I notice as a viewer is that I've seen that. I've seen that from a ton of big men. And there are big men around who are still doing that. What the hell do I need that from every big man when Luchasaurus actually had something very unique that fans were really into? That he had one of the hottest hot tags all of pro wrestling. That man could stand on the apron and get Luchasaurus chants. The fact that is Luchasaurus ever going to be somebody that I want to see in a major angle? Not really. Is he going to be somebody that I want to see hold a singles title or be in a main event feud? Probably not. But is he somebody who's unique, brings a very strong presence to live shows? He is. And did you take that away by just having him go out there and do generic choke slams and work generic big man stuff? You kind of did. And so for me, I'm good with Luchasaurus just being in Jungle Boy's corner. and continuing to do what he does best, especially when you already have another feud on the show that's centered around two guys and a betrayal, which is Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. Don't need to have that going twice on the show. So I was good with this. I'm good with Luchasaurus being back with Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy decided to show some fire, and if Christian Cage is gonna go personal, so is Jungle Boy. I didn't know Christian Cage got divorced. I didn't know that at all. I had not been paying attention to that. And so that was interesting. And he went there, and I appreciated Jungle Boy taking the little digs at him. He talked about him having a small prick, and he's like, maybe that's why he got divorced. There's definitely a miscue on Christian having the live promo backstage and Jungle Boy not knowing to like stop talking. And like Christian turns around and he's like, why is he still going? And you could see a little bit of awkwardness there, but once Christian got going, he reminded us that he wasn't scared. He gave typical heel stuff. He wasn't scared of what Jungle Boy was going to do to him. He was scared of what he could do to Jungle Boy. And just you wait, because I know your deepest, darkest secrets. This was great shit. This is another program and feud that, again, we know where we're heading for All Out. I'm ready for this one, and I'm excited to see the payoff in the actual match between the two.
So the big downfall of this segment was that Christian just was not watching TV like you're supposed to backstage. You're supposed to on a slate. But I really liked this segment. It was nice to get some fire out of Jungle Boy. He's still coming along a little bit on the mic, but this I think was the best promo we've seen him give, especially live. And I think when somebody attacks family members who have passed, like that's a really sounds weird, but it's a really freeing device because you as a babyface now have full reign to do and say basically whatever you want. Like, I don't think you have to be careful about anything because they just went after dead family members. So that let Jungle Boy do whatever he wanted to and needed to, which I think is something that's really, really valuable. The Christian heel turn has been so great to me in its simplicity. Like, he's doing some very fundamental heel work and coloring in the lines of that heel work with shades of the story, I keep saying, because this has just been like textbook 101, but he's made it feel compelling with the juice of the story of what's in front of him. And I think it's just like a really nice reminder of like, hey, all the fundamentals of being a bad guy still work. Like, we don't have to overcomplicate it at all. Let's make this clean and simple. And I think it's been really, really effective. As far as Luchasaurus goes, he's a wrestler that's not really for me, which is fine. Like, not every wrestler has to be for me. So from a taste perspective, he's not my favorite guy in the world. It's not because of the way he works. I think the way that he works is actually something really special and unique. And I don't really understand the argument because him being able to do things like a shooting star press as a bigger guy makes him that much more punishing as a bigger guy. So I don't even buy into the baseline of like, it's not as effective for a big dude to work that way, because if you can do all those moves as a bigger dude, they're extremely impactful, right? Like they're all the more painful and all the more punishment inducing. So I don't really buy into that narrative. And I also just don't think you should have to work a certain way because a bunch of guys before you did it. That seems silly. And if you're a wrestler that's connecting with kids, do flashy shit. Like, why not? Like, that's right. Basically, he's a lucha dinosaur, man. Like, that's a kid-oriented character.
Right. And like, my kids love Luchasaurus. And I think that's part of why I watch wrestling the way I do. I watch wrestling with my kids. And I will say, for those of you who have been with me these last any time in the last 17 years, and I know there's a good amount of people, specifically in the chat, I see names that I've recognized from over the years. You've probably seen my evolution as a wrestling fan, and one of the things that you've seen from me, especially since like 2018, is that I watch wrestling through the eyes of my kids, because I watch Dynamite with my son, and so I do try to pick up on a lot of what he's excited by. And so when I see people harp on things that my kids like, I'm like, shut the fuck up. Because, like, obviously
It's
kids...
for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, kids obviously like this. And so it's not for me. Look, there's plenty of things in wrestling that aren't for me.
Sure.
I'll say this. Something that's very popular that's not for me. Never heard me down on it before. But it's not for me. There's two people in pro wrestling I absolutely do not get. Pat McAfee. Don't get it. Don't get it at all. And every time I see tweets that are like, wow, Pat McAfee, he's like the best. And I love his energy. And I just think, no, this dude's like annoying as shit. But like, obviously, there's something that's connecting with people. It's not me. But I recognize that it connects with them.
Sure.
So therefore, you can have Pat McAfee. And Logan Paul, other one. I don't get Logan Paul. But
the thing with Logan Paul was that he's better than Dominic Mysterio. That's the only conversation that I've been hearing is like, how is this guy already better than that guy? Which I don't like the comparison game. I think I'm not a big Pat Mac gal personally, but I think he feels authentic in his delivery of promos, which I feel like WWE...
I thought he ruined Shinsuke's entrance, by the way, and that I feel is unforgivable. But
that is.
That
is. But this is an important conversation too, because I think one thing that gets lost is there's a difference between things that don't make sense because they don't make wrestling sense and taste. And I always try to distinguish between I don't like this because of taste or I don't like this because it doesn't make wrestling sense, because those are two extremely different things. And to me, that's the root of substantive criticism, which taste is something that we'll talk about in the main event.
I guess it is. And so next we had Swerve Strickland versus Tony Nese and Mark Sterling in a handicap match. In that Swerve was just ready to be done with Mark Sterling. Mark Sterling, of course, introduced the People Against Swerve Strickland petition a couple weeks ago. It's been about 3 weeks. He had a number of people sign it, including Max Caster. And he also had Tony Nese sign it. He tried to get Orange Cassidy to sign it. It ended up leading to a match. But regardless, it was time here for Swerve to finally want to put away Mark Sterling once and for all. I had to ask somebody who was at the show because there was a chant happening when they got back from commercial that I couldn't make out, but I could make out half of it, and it was "No, we don't." And it was something, no, we don't. And he told me they were chanting, or half the crowd was chanting, "We want Smart Mark," and the other half was chanting, "No, we don't." And so that was fascinating. Who are these smart Mark Sterling fans? I like Mark Sterling, but it's just interesting to hear that there were people in the crowd that were actually kind of for him. I appreciate that my change to Swerve's music keeps getting more and more over each week.
Yeah, it does.
I was going to tweet this, but I put together a video of the times it's aired so far, and each time it plays, it gets louder. That the Swerve sounds, that the crowd really didn't do it much the first time because I think they didn't know what to expect. But each time since then, it's gotten louder. Thank you, Worcester, Massachusetts, for proving
keep the chain going.
For proving my idea right, because I could have been wrong as hell on this. When I presented this idea of, hey, I think Swerve's music needs Who's House added to the intro, I could have been way off base. Because the thing is, when it comes to things like that, you could have all the ideas in the world. Wrestlers will say this all the time. You could have all the ideas in the world, but until it's in front of a crowd and you've seen how they react, you never actually know. Look at Jericho trying to get GFY over earlier this year. How'd that go?
To his credit, him being a wizard did get over. Like, who would have thought? You know what I mean? Like, you just don't know.
You don't know until it's out there in front of people. And I'm not one of those guys who gets to do this all the time. So I was like, I think it'll get over, but I'm not sure, but I hope it does. In the first week, I was like my heart was beating out of my chest. And when it like barely got a reaction, I was like, oh, fuck, I was wrong. No one's ever going to listen to me again. But then the following week, it was over. And the week after that, it was over. And there we go. Anyway, the match itself. We've seen Swerve and Tony Nese work together before. This was more about Swerve getting his hands on Mark Sterling. And once he was finally able to, he kicked his head off with the house call. 1, 2, 3, beat him. I thought the ending was a little bit weird in that Tony Nese tried to grab Swerve's leg to stop him from hitting the house call, but then just kind of like gave up and laid there and let Swerve hit the 1, 2, 3. But backstage, we see Keith Lee taking a big old nap because Josh Woods was standing over him. And then Tony Nese attacks Swerve, and it looks like, at least as a stopgap thing, we've got a little bit of a tag team program. Josh Woods teaming with Tony Nese to take on Swerve in Our Glory. What did you think?
I think this is the only thing in the show that I was like, oh, this could have maybe been on Rampage instead or something. Like, this didn't feel like I super needed it. I think Swerve is terrible. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm so kidding. Swerve is like,
I was going to say, I've got my finger right on that remove button.
I am so kidding. Like, my goodness. I'm so happy that they have the tag titles because I feel like both Lee and Swerve were probably not going to be in line for single shots necessarily super soon, and they so both deserve gold. And the way that they've gelled as a tag team so quickly is so impressive to me. But in this match alone, like we knew what Tony Nese could do. We've, like, to your point, we've seen Swerve and Nese together before. And there was never a doubt that this was going to be a good match in the ring. Smart Mark did surprise me in some of the reactions that he was getting, but I like Mark Sterling. Josh Woods being a stopgap is really interesting to me. I think he and Tony Nese could be great together. My heart aches because I really, really hope that whatever's going on with Gresham gets resolved, because I really wanted to see the Foundation versus the Blackpool Combat Club, and I would love for Josh Woods to have been a part of that story at some point. So while I am intrigued, there's a big piece of me that's like, oh, I kind of hope it's temporary though, because I do want that to work out so badly. But Josh Wood, an incredibly impressive talent in Ring of Honor, and very happy to see him on AEW. But this was great. It served its purpose. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I love what Keith Lee and Swerve can do as a tag team and what it does for them as individuals in the same breath. And I think if you want to have Josh Woods versus Tony Nese as challengers to that, my goodness, that sounds like a blast. So I'm all for it.
So you mentioned Rampage, by the way, and like, I hope Rampage is starting to make a little more sense to people, because I think for a long time people weren't sure what Rampage was supposed to be. But there seems to be kind of this cycle with Rampage, where Rampage, Dynamite kind of has its established stuff, and Rampage almost has been, almost since day one, the program that kind of functions as the springboard into Dynamite. Where, like, when Rampage first kicked off, CM Punk didn't have a match on Dynamite till October, and he debuted in August, but his matches were taking place on Rampage. Bryan Danielson, same thing. Bryan Danielson's matches, he was having Rampage matches. Adam Cole, when he first came in, was almost like known as Rampage King. I almost had it burned in my brain that the Rampage theme would play, followed by You Know It's All About the Boom. Like, I hear those still side by side. And when Swerve first came in, I noticed some of the detractors were like, oh, look at Swerve, he signed a big deal, but now they brought him in as a big deal, but we only see him on Rampage. And my brain immediately went to, have you not noticed that's how people get brought in? That Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, Adam Cole were all brought in, started on Rampage, now are regulars on Dynamite. And that's just kind of how the cycle goes with Rampage. And because I think when Rampage first came about, the expectation from a lot of people was SmackDown. They saw it as the equivalent from Raw to SmackDown. But I remember a podcast Tony Khan did back in 2020 when Rampage was first announced, and they said, are you sure you want to take on a second show? Because you know what Thunder did to WCW. And his response was, well, I'm not thinking more along the lines of Thunder. I'm thinking more like Sunday Night Heat. And like early Sunday Night Heat, like 98, 99. And I knew exactly what he meant by that. because Sunday Night Heat was kind of a supplemental program to Raw. It wasn't the follow-up program like SmackDown was. It was the things we couldn't necessarily fit on Raw, or the things we're like kind of thinking about putting on Raw eventually, we're going to use Sunday Night Heat for. And then eventually they start making their way into Raw. And I got that. I knew that's exactly what he wanted Rampage to be. But the issue was the first dance. The first dance set a crazy expectation. And you set a crazy expectation for it because one of the biggest moments, wrestling goddamn history, the return of CM Punk. Probably a moment that Kate here wakes up to and plays every day of her life.
That I left ROH early for to go watch. Yeah, I was at ROH Live and was like, I love you, Gresham, but my boy's coming back tonight. I gotta go.
Right.
But yeah, I think the other thing is, it's just, I think partly due to the time slot too. But I feel like they scale up their live rampages and their taped rampages to be different products almost. So as somebody who starts their Friday night reviews at 11 o'clock, I would love to see that move to a new time slot. But I think Rampage, I would say
I'll say this. Absolutely new time slot. As far as everything I said is concerned about the structure of the program, I think it is what it is. As far as time slot is concerned, my God, put it anywhere else. I don't want to watch wrestling late on Fridays, and I don't even have to review it.
I was going to say, I just don't want to start my review at 11:15. That's my only thing.
If you could get it earlier, that'd be great. Saturdays would be even better, but I get it. There's so much wrestling on that finding a uncontested, unique spot is tough. But man, I still want a wrestling show to air at Saturdays at 6:05 Eastern on the Superstation, but I know that that's not going to happen. But I want, and somebody in the chat asked us, we'll have a baseball team. I mean, when the Rockies are doing well enough, sure. But other than that, not really. I am very much into playoff baseball, and that's when like I really get into it. Otherwise, you guys know me, I'm a basketball guy. I do watch and follow a lot of football, but
baseball's a long season.
Yes. Baseball is a long season. But yeah, no, postseason baseball is some of my favorite stuff. The World Series is still kind of unmatched in terms of excitement, and those late nights can be wonderful. Okay. AEW Women's title on the line. Thunder Rosa taking on Miyu Yamashita. As I've mentioned before, I'm a big Tokyo Joshi Pro fan. I saw this match the first time it took place. I actually thought it was better the first time it took place. But saw it in full. Watched it live. Stayed up fucking super late. Watched it at 2 o'clock in the morning to watch this match take place live. There were other things I wanted to see on the show at Summer Sun Princess back at the beginning of July. But I was happy to get to see Miyu Yamashita get her shine on Dynamite. I appreciated that some of the crowd was into Miyu. But this was another defense from Thunder Rosa. There were some rough spots in this match. As soon as I saw them, I immediately went, fuck, the botches crowd is going to get a hold of these and act like this is an indictment on the whole careers of these two. But otherwise, I thought, outside of those rough spots, I had fun with this match. I thought it was intense. I thought Miyu got to show out and look good here. I love Joshi style wrestling, and I love when Thunder Rosa gets to do it. She, of course, had a strong presence in Tokyo Joshi Pro, former champion in Tokyo Joshi Pro. But this was that match. And I thought this was... Let me think about the statement before I finish it. Okay, I'll say this. This was the best title defense Thunder Rosa has had on Dynamite. There we go. I narrowed that so far down that there's no way to take that away from me. Mainly because some will say the Double or Nothing one was better. Some will say Forbidden Door was better. You might even be able to argue Battle of the Belts was better. But on Dynamite, you, Miss Kate, I sometimes feel you are a masochist when it comes to deciding how you are going to let Twitter essentially come at you. Do you mute those tweets? You would have to, because
sometimes.
For me, I tweeted about Bayley the other day in a tweet that ultimately was a positive tweet, but may have had a little bit of a negative thing in there where I had said that, I mentioned Bayley's 2019, but the overarching point of the tweet was that she overcame all of that and eventually ended up having the best run of her career. But the fact that I had anything negative to say at all, my God, the quote tweets, the replies were all coming at me. How could you have anything negative to say about any of this? Blah, blah, blah. I eventually muted it, let it go. I know you, Kate. I know how passionately you feel about the showcase of women's wrestling, particularly in AEW. And I say particularly because the thing people come at you most for is, well, did you say this? They'll search your tweets. They'll look for your history. They'll say, did you say any of this? It's always going to be a thing. But yeah, it's Twitter.
So there's a few things with that. One, I find it hilarious that people think that I don't criticize the WWE women's division, because every Friday night I have a lot to say. The reason it's particularly frustrating in AEW is I feel like the WWE product has been pretty rough across the board. And in AEW, I know what they're creatively capable of. And it feels like a more active choice not to do it in the women's division, because I see what they're capable of with the men and with the tag wrestling. And I don't feel like we're getting a lot of that with the women's division. The reason I don't care on Twitter is I really don't care what a bunch of men have to say about my feelings as a woman about women's wrestling. Like that doesn't really bother me. I usually
just wouldn't be able to put up with the notifications. That's all. I'm just like,
oh, that gets muted. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I'm hoping you at least.
I'll respond to some, I'll block some, and then just hit the mute button. But when you as a company make a choice to bring it, so from the match perspective, there were parts of this that did feel a little clunky. I don't think this was Thunder Rosa's best performance. I didn't watch it live, but I did actively seek out the first go round of this because I thought it was a big deal that Thunder Rosa lost, and that there was a story going into this episode of Dynamite.
I was shocked that she lost too, by the way, mainly just because I thought they just put the stip on the match just to give it some stakes. It didn't even occur to me that Miyu could win. But I love Miyu Yamashita, so it was like, okay, I'm with this. She's going to appear on Dynamite.
I think she won the crowd over with her strikes. Like, when you see someone kick that hard, I think it's really hard not to love them. I think it's very, very fun. But part of my frustration and the reason that I don't know if you can be mouthy on Twitter because you're not actually using your mouth, but basically mouthy on Twitter, is that it feels like a compounded thing of continued frustrations. We've seen multiple tournaments and battle royals that didn't really lead to anywhere. And then for this match to go on in the 9:30 slot, you're telling me that like the pinnacle of women's wrestling in your own company goes on in the 9:30 slot. Like the biggest thing that you have going, you brought in a world-renowned talent, right? To put them on in the 9:30 slot. Not even at the top of the 9 o'clock hour, which like people would at least be tuning in for. Like this to me does read as the graveyard slot. To have a world title match, male or woman, not opening or closing the show feels insulting, especially when the thing that closed is also not a world title match.
But would you have put I mean, you said you would, but I guess looking at, because I saw that point, and I agree that the 9:30 slot is not necessarily where I would have put this. I might have swapped this with the previous match. Would you? I can't say I would have put this over either of the matches we got to open or close, though. I wouldn't have put this over the Moxley and Roosh, simply because Jon Moxley. I wouldn't have put this over Bryan Danielson. This was his return match after 2 months, where we don't really, where everybody was concerned about his condition. I wouldn't have necessarily, I might have actually put that on first, but now knowing that they had the shock ending to it, I now get why that went on last. I don't necessarily see any scenario where Thunder Rosa versus Miyu Yamashita should have taken either of those spots. That's not to say that a Thunder Rosa match in general or a AEW women's title match in general shouldn't. But I think if Thunder Rosa versus, say, any of the major players in the AEW women's division, Ruby Soho, or, we've seen Britt Baker, so I'm not going to say Britt, but if we had seen even Toni Storm, any of the other major players in the women's division in that slot, I would probably agree. Even as a Miyu Yamashita fan, I recognize that she's not necessarily somebody who has that presence on TV. She's not well known even within the program of AEW fans. I wouldn't have necessarily done that. But I think even as the second match, maybe, or in the slot that Swerve and Mark Sterling and Tony Nese ended up taking, I could see that. But I don't know that I necessarily agree with first or last.
Then put something on a different show. Put something on main event Rampage with it. Put Mox on Rampage. It's still the same live crowd. They're still going to get to see all the same stuff, but you get to script whatever you want. You could have Danielson and Garcia open Rampage. It's more what it's indicative of in the bigger picture. If this was like a one-time thing, fine. And from an in-ring perspective, I understand because it didn't play out necessarily the way that we wanted it to. But you're telling me that the most important thing in all of women's wrestling on your show is a 10-minute match at 9:30, which is no different than any other week. And I think Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb was great. I think Thunder Rosa and Toni Storm was great. I thought this match was pretty good. I thought her match against Nyla was very good. And you have not done proper builds around all these things. So it's like that on top of all of this. And as I mentioned before, that compounded with every woman needing a man to get on television. I will, of course, make an exception for the baddies in Stokely. That's a completely different situation. Like, Stokely is a manager who, to be honest, of all the title pictures up until this episode, that was kind of the only one that felt super important, and had a story around it up until now.
It felt like last week, I thought when, and Phil brought it up on the show, but when Athena and Jade Cargill, and I was one of the people critiquing the fact that they hadn't done anything with Athena and Jade Cargill yet, and that's a match that's been building since Double or Nothing. But credit where it's due, when they had that stare down in the middle of the ring, the crowd popped and was kind of going nuts for the idea of these two finally being face to face. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess fine. I can wait on that match, even though it's now, if we end up having waited till All Out for Athena versus Jade Cargill, that's over 3 months that went
I think
on.
that'll be Battle of the Belts.
Battle of the Belts is next week, though. So
oh wow, that's next week.
It's even Battle of the Belts is now kind of too soon.
Yeah,
right?
that's
so
so
it's
weird. That's funny. I thought it was the week after for some reason.
Yeah, but Battle of the Belts is a week from Sunday or Saturday. It's either go all the way and go home right now, or stretch this out till September.
Sure.
And I don't know what we do with that. So
I just encourage people overall. Again, like this, if this was one isolated thing, that's fine. But if the situations were reversed, buildings would be set on fire. Like, if the treatment of the women's division was how the men's division is treated, people would be outraged. And if you're outraged about that, think about how then I feel about things like this. So, again, on its own, maybe it's not the worst thing, but compounded with, I think, the other frustrations that there's been with the women's division for me overall, this just looks really... It feels like you're telling me that your own women's title is not important based on the time slot and the builds that you've been giving it.
I am curious what the research behind the 9:30 time slot is. And I say that because this wasn't always the case with the women's division. That we've seen multiple women's matches that were one that have main evented or they've never opened. But we've seen multiple main events and we've seen multiple... even the second match on the show. You know, as a matter of fact, for a long time, it was the second segment where, as if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't Riho versus... And I feel like Riho is like their exception, right? Like they know Riho is a draw. She is a time slot draw. But like Riho versus Serena Deeb, I'm pretty sure that went on, I think, second on the show when that took place. And so to me, it's like when there's specific women where you know the company believes in them, like a Riho, like a Britt Baker. It seems like they can fall anywhere in the show. Britt has opened the show, actually. Mixed tag match, but she has. But it feels like anything else does fall in that 9:30 time slot. And I'm curious what the... I don't know. You know me. I never assume ill intent with things. I assume
but like
that
we also didn't even get a video package about Miyu. You know what I mean? Like there was nothing special. Like,
they didn't do a video pack, but they reshowed the match from Summer Sun Princess.
Yes, they did do that.
And so yeah, I do get just a little bit curious about those things and how this all plays out. Overall, we've talked about this match longer than it actually went. But because overall I give the match it was a B- for me. And Van Twinblade has things to say. He says Sway betrayed 2D Sunday and I'm not over it. You know what I haven't even looked at because I know Streamlabs was having issues earlier.
Humper chats.
Yeah, I hadn't even looked at Humper chats. And the reason was because Streamlabs had tweeted. I guess we didn't have anything. So we're good. But they had tweeted out that they were having issues.
We did have this from Ray saying essentially kind of what I was saying, that most fans don't even really know her, and AEW didn't really make an effort to tell us who she was. They promoted it, but they didn't really tell us about her. And I think that's also just an opportunity whenever you're bringing anybody in. And they don't do that with the men either. They're just kind of like, here's Ishii, hope you know who he is. Like,
yeah. And you know, the weird thing about that is that I would at least like to talk about that from the men's perspective. From women's, different conversation maybe. From men's, I don't give a shit. And that shit doesn't matter. And the reason I say that shit doesn't matter is because I feel like that's something we as wrestling people kind of overanalyze. But like statistically, have you ever looked at minute by minute ratings for pro wrestling programming?
I have not really.
Do you know the stuff that loses? Do you know what loses the most viewers more than anything else?
Video packages.
Video packages lose viewers because people see them as commercials. Like ultimately, your average viewer really just wants to see people like wrestle, right? And like I think, and like I said, I think there is a wrestling analyst thing where people are like, well, why didn't they explain this? And it's because you're used to I'm not saying you specifically. I'm saying in general when people talk about this, they're like, it's because you're used to kind of things being over-explained to you, which WWE has done forever, where they will hammer things in your head until you know. They will show you stuff from earlier in the night where, God, we live in the age of DVR. If I wanted to see it again, I would watch it again.
Yeah, it happened before the commercial break. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're showing me stuff that I know I can see again, and I have the ability to see again. I think that there's a happy medium. I don't think AEW reached the happy medium with Miyu Yamashita. I think that one of the things AEW does really well are the Road 2 packages. And I
Yes.
like those Road 2 packages because of the fact that when you run those, you're essentially giving people the ability. Look, it's YouTube. More people have access to YouTube than any platform on the planet. Like, I will never, ever take an argument that YouTube is worse off than cable when YouTube doesn't, or when cable TV doesn't have 1/10, I think it's 100th, sorry, 1/100th of the reach that YouTube has. And so I always say that if people want that kind of information, I think it's on AEW to put that kind of stuff together and give people access to it. I think that Twitter video packages are a good thing. I think Facebook, YouTube, any place you can put video packages to give people some more background on things. And if they want to seek that, they can. But I think when you only have 2 hours of a TV show, and you're presenting it in front of a live crowd, I think the best thing you can do for people is give them as much content in the arena as possible. So to me, I think it's a complete waste of time to run video packages for things that people have access to otherwise. We live in a digital age where people can get it if they want it. Just give them stuff in the arena. And
my only argument is that it would make I don't think you have to do it with every competitor who's coming in, especially with the rotating cast that you have in AEW, for a world title shot. Just to give it a big fight feel.
That's why I was saying,
I feel like you should.
With Miyu, they didn't do that, right? Where, like, if I remember correctly, I don't recall there being a big showcase of Miyu Yamashita on Road 2 or anything along those lines, or anything that they posted even on their Twitter. I think that's as far as I would need to go. I don't need it in the show. In the show, keep the show in the arena is what I feel like, because, God damn it, I have been to 100 WWE shows over the years. I enjoyed a lot of them. But I will tell you, the thing I like least in attending a wrestling show is when I have to sit in my seat and watch stuff on the Tron. That is a waste of my time. I came to see the action in the ring. Give me stuff in the ring. That's all I care about. And that's the stuff that gets the biggest reactions. Give people the most of their show. I think Yamashita is one that they should have done more by. And I think as far as introducing new people is concerned, just give them content on the socials. I feel that works. What does the chat think of what I had to say there? The problem isn't with wrestling fans, but the wider audience, which you depend on to pull good rating numbers. But the thing is, with the wider audience, the ratings have shown that the more wrestling you give them, the better. Bryan Danielson versus Hangman Adam Page went an hour and grew in viewership. People just want to see people wrestle. Like, it grew as time went on. The notion that people don't want to see the in-ring action is complete horseshit, and there's no data to back that up. But on the other hand, I do feel like, now granted, stars are a different story. You know, you could have Roman Reigns go out there and have his 8-minute long entrance, and people do tune in for that. But there's very few people you can do that with. Because ultimately, there's a counterpoint to what I just said. Because as much as the Roman Reigns entrance draws, Roman Reigns versus Riddle from a few weeks ago, that shit drew huge. Yeah. Because ultimately, no matter what, in a wrestling program, people still want to see the actual wrestling happening. And there's the largest segment in the history of Monday Night Raw to this day is Undertaker versus Stone Cold Steve Austin for the WWF Championship in a match. You'll never be able to prove that pro wrestling isn't the piece that people have come to see and want to see.
Sure.
So I don't know. That's people just want to see people wrestle. Yes, thank you in the chat like that. I don't know. But also I recognize I see things differently than that. But hey, we've got one last thing to talk about here, and that is the returning Bryan Danielson taking on Daniel Garcia. Bryan Danielson, there was a side note. If you listen to our interview with Mikey Ruckus over on Grapsity, you'll know that there was a new version of Bryan Danielson's theme released on the Symphony album. But in our interview, one of the things that Mikey Ruckus mentioned was that song was actually the original Bryan Danielson theme that he made for the debut, and then Born for Greatness was actually made after the fact. So I know people were asking, can we see the And again, Corey Richmond says, if the average audience is 50 plus, that audience is not watching YouTube. Do your parents not watch YouTube? Because mine do. That's how my parents end up down conspiracy rabbit holes. My parents very much know how to use YouTube. Again, I don't think that's a true thing. Look at the comments on any like music video from the 80s and look at the comments where people are like, oh, my childhood. Those people are in their 50s and 60s. So I don't know. I don't think that's true either. I think that that's a...
I'll say, though, I get that it's the most accessible thing, but Dynamite is still the most watched thing by almost, 4 times? And compared to what they draw on, maybe 3 times to what they draw on YouTube shows, so...
Depends on what it is. I mean, on Dark, sure, that's true. But, like, look at YouTube segments, for example. The Swerve and Keith Lee winning the tag titles. That's almost...
Sure, yeah.
That segment almost has 1 million views on YouTube. I know that my daughter's friends that are wrestling fans, they have never seen a live Raw in their life. They've only watched the show in YouTube clips. And so, because the show runs too late for them. But as kids, they consume it in just the YouTube segments.
For sure.
So I recognize there's a huge portion of people who are only consuming it that way. And I think they're
consuming segments of the television show. You know what I mean? Like you have to provide the most popular YouTube comment, you have to put it on the TV show.
Yeah. And, I see that says, I think you need to show highlight packages of Dark and Elevation need to air on TV. No, bad idea. Again, video packages. Don't do that. I think that's a really bad idea. I think, honestly, the approach I would take is what they do, which is just run the ticker across the bottom and then say, for more, to see these matches, go watch YouTube. I think the part that's hurt Dark and Elevation's viewership, because Dark and Elevation used to draw 1 million viewers on YouTube. The part that's hurt it is the shift to squash matches. I think that it wasn't always that. They had competitive matches for a long time. But I think as people now recognize, okay, there's a wrestler I know versus a wrestler I don't know. Wonder how this one's going to go.
Yeah.
And I think the issue with Dark and Elevation is that it's really just the same show each week, that you're really just watching for the entrances and maybe the finisher. And maybe you'll get a competitive match. But it wasn't always that. The early Dark episodes, we got Kenny Omega versus Joey Janela. Those shows drew. So I don't know. I think we can have a conversation about the change in Dark chat, about changing what Dark is, but I think and how it's presented itself. Because I think Daily's Place really just gave them this idea of, let's bring in wrestlers and have them get squashed. But as far as running the show on TV, don't do that.
No.
Don't do that. Please don't do that. For my sake, I just want to watch the wrestling.
There's already too much.
There's already too much. But the main event, Bryan Danielson, Daniel Garcia. What was this going to be? God, I love Bryan Danielson. That is my favorite wrestler ever. That man is so freaking over. And whether and we could talk across either company he was in at the top. We could talk. I said this on Twitter yesterday. Only one person tried to argue, and it's some troll that I muted afterward. But I said that Bryan Danielson has the most over wrestling in the history of wrestling. And I still believe that's true. I said that back in 2013, where I was in a crowd in Kansas City one time, and Bryan Danielson's entrance didn't even do that well crowd-wise. But man, once he got in the ring, every little bit of offense, he has the crowd hanging on. Everything he does. And that is something really special. And he still has that. And the fact that people were so happy to have him back, through a welcome back chants. But then as soon as he starts laying in his offense to Daniel Garcia, crowd is on every single move. Bryan Danielson is the best at this. There is nobody better at this than Bryan Danielson. So much so that the thing that's got people pearl clutching today was the fact that Bryan really very much enjoys working people and getting people concerned about his injuries, to the point of where there was a huge amount of panic over Bryan working the head injury And when he collapsed in the middle of the ring. Guys, let the pros do their thing. I promise you, if something were actually wrong, there are kind of ways to communicate that. Like, you could watch Bryan communicate to Bryce Remsburg that he's fine, that he's selling. I think if that didn't sell you, the fact that Daniel Garcia then DDTs him on the concrete came immediately after that. Well, if that didn't sell you, then I don't know what would. I love Bryan, and if I am able to shriek at the idea that Bryan is actually going to be hurt, but I know Bryan Danielson, and I've been watching his work for 15 years. I recognize that he is doing a great job, and this was awesome. Bryan had a big comeback. The way he dropped Daniel Garcia at the first angle looked awful. When you see the replay, it's like, okay, Garcia's fine. But one of them looked really bad. But then an arm came up and grabbed Bryan Danielson. Who the hell could that have been? I was hoping it was someone more exciting when we got the reveal of who it was. But at the time, I was intrigued. But that led to Garcia locking in a sharpshooter on after he hits a pile driver on Bryan, and then locks him in a sharpshooter. Bryan passes out. Ref calls it. Holy shit, Daniel Garcia, 23-year-old Daniel Garcia just beat Bryan Danielson in the middle of the ring in his comeback match. What a moment. I feel like that did so much for Daniel Garcia. If you hate Daniel Garcia, man, you're going to hate him even more now. And if you love Daniel Garcia, this kind of made him in a way where...
Are you not sports entertained, Will?
I mean, let me tell you, there's been a formula with Daniel Garcia lately, and it's taken me a minute to pick up on it, but now that I've got it, I'm in. And what I mean by that is Daniel Garcia has been having a lot of repeat matches lately. But the repeat matches have not gone remotely the same way as the first. Case in point, a couple weeks ago, Daniel Garcia had a rematch with Jon Moxley. They had their first match at the first dance. And it was fairly quick. Mox just kind of beat the shit out of Daniel Garcia. That was it. In the second match, Mox tried to do the same things, and Garcia had a counter for everything, and Mox had to work his ass off to finally beat Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia and Bryan have faced each other before. Match went a lot faster before. This time around, not only was Daniel Garcia way more competitive than he was the first time, but he actually beat Bryan Danielson. That shit to me is great stuff. I'm liking them showing, because I feel like it's a deliberate attempt to show Daniel Garcia's evolution as a performer. And I love it. But it's always important that we make sure we know what our guests thought. Kate, how did you feel about this?
So I have loved the evolution of Garcia. I've loved, I liked that they put him over here a lot. I think it's cool when you and I know, and I'm sure our audience is smart enough to know too, that if Danielson didn't want to lose in his comeback match, he didn't have to lose in his comeback match. It's really cool that Danielson had such an ego aside that he put over Daniel Garcia in his comeback match. That's really, really special. The match was fantastic. I like you. Didn't need it to be Jake Hager.
Oh, you like me? Thank you.
I do like you. I did not need Jake Hager. I love the idea of a heel cheating to win. I especially like, we had this conversation on the Mark Order podcast a little bit yesterday of when they have people cheating to win, it's rarely to take such an uneven playing field to make it level. It's two competitors who feel like they should be in the ring together. And one of them has to cheat to win just because that's how he's going to get the victory because he's smart enough. But it's not like Daniel Garcia is a pathetic wrestler and Bryan Danielson is the best wrestler full time, which he is. And they need to like close the gap that hard. These are two professional wrestlers that are two of the best doing it. There's very little Jake Hager can do to make me.
I almost would have just rather not known who it was. I would rather be sitting here wondering who the hand was than have found out it was Jake Hager.
Somebody was like, "Oh, would it have made a difference if it was Daddy Magic?" And I was like, "It would, but not for any reason other than that I just don't like Jake Hager. Like, it's not like this was bad wrestling logic in any way. I just don't like Jake Hager, and he doesn't really do anything for me. So I didn't want him to have any moment. but I would have preferred a different cheat to win, I think. But as far as the match goes, I mean, Danielson looked great. I didn't like him selling like that, not in a pearl clutching way, but in a way that I'm supposed to not like it. Like, it just made me
and that was how I felt. Like, the first time he collapsed, I kind of bought it for a sec, and then I'm watching Bryce, and I'm like, okay, I know what this is.
Yeah, I was just a mark. Like, I just didn't want to see it because I didn't want to see it.
Yeah, I know. By the way, this was nearly twice the length of their first match that took place back at Bridgeport, Connecticut. That would have been back in February, I want to say. But let's be sure that's an accurate statement.
Name the arena. Well, name it.
I mean, I said it was in Bridgeport. I don't know the name of the arena. But it was the same arena that Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano had their title match, in which Adam Cole won the NXT championship. I know that. It was hold on, I have it here. Webster Bank Arena. Wouldn't have known. No, not in a million years. What the fuck is Webster Bank?
No.
On the other hand, though, Bryan versus Garcia took place. Yes, it was 10 minutes long the first time it took place back in February. And the rematch here was 18 minutes. But this time, Garcia won. And again, that just seems to be what we're doing with Garcia. They're trying to show his evolution as a performer and the things that have increased with him. So I love it. This match to me got a solid A. Can't go A+, but a solid A. I had fun with it.
It would have been an A+ if it wasn't Jake Hager.
Would have been an A+ if I just didn't know who it was.
I would have given it an S if we just didn't know who the reveal was. S tiered all the way.
Nah,
but
I liked it a lot, though.
As did I. There were a lot of really fun spots in here. The chat was saying that this was, what was this? This was Brett Stone Cold without the double turn at the end, as far as the finish goes. Yeah. I really, I love Garcia because he looks like he's trying to win a match all the time, which I like wrestlers like that. And I'm not an anti-flippy-do person, but I have a special affinity for wrestlers who always look like they're trying to win a match and do the most damage to their opponent in that. So, his match with Wheeler at the pay-per-view was fantastic as well. And to see him do this less than a week later, I thought was so awesome. And Danielson is just incredible.
And I saw people talking up the fact that this is playing up the feud with Wheeler, because it's clear the feud's not over. And the fact that Garcia won by beating one Wheeler's kind of mentor right now, and won in a way where he clearly learned from his mistakes in the match at Death Before Dishonor. Great shit here. This is great shit. This is a great Dynamite. I had a lot of fun with this Dynamite. Did everybody else have a lot of fun with this Dynamite? Let's check the rating, shall we? Because we know we can't end Day After Dynamite without knowing the rating. But let's go to our friends over at WrestleNomics. Brandon Thurston, what have you got for me? This did 976,000, which would be up from last week's. I'm pretty sure last week was like 910. It did a 0.33 in 1849, which would have been over last week because I did a 0.32. And that is an increase kind of all around. I guess year over year, Dynamite still down 8% from last year, but of the cable wrestling shows, that's still the least any of them are down, because Raw is down 9% from last year and for the month of July, and NXT down a 16%. And then TV overall is down 7%. So actually still below what TV's doing as a whole. So questions and things to be had about that. And that's for overall viewership. That kind of all still applies to regular viewership. But otherwise, and that was good for number 2 because it lost to the Yankees game. That was number 1. So the streak is over. Dynamite, first time in a few weeks, in a few months, not number 1 on cable. I think they had 5 straight weeks, and now they're number 2.
Sorry about my Yankees.
Yeah.
Subway Series, that's going to pull you.
But either way, and now they've been asking us to talk about Trios tournament predictions. I think this is interesting, right? Because they announced on this show that the Undisputed Elite is back next week. All 5 members will be there. Ooh, this could all play very well into the tournament coming up because I don't know that Kyle O'Reilly's okay because he was like really hurt last I heard. But I think, I mean, look, Tony said it. He outright said, I'm not doing this tournament without Kenny back because Kenny and the Bucks are kind of the quintessential trio to AEW. Now, does that mean that they win the titles? I don't know because to me, one thing AEW has kind of done very interestingly is for the first champions, they haven't gone with the conventional option. Like we all thought the Young Bucks were going to be the first tag team champs. Nope, they lost. It went to SCU. And there were, like, I suppose Cody was like a shoe-in for the TNT title. But for the most part, they kind of go in a direction you may not expect. Like, if I were to pick, if I were thinking about trios that have been around since the beginning of AEW, and you want to kind of reward longevity, I'd go Best Friends, to be honest. But I know that you also don't want to have Kenny lose his comeback. So I don't know. But at the same time, you could have Cole cost him because there's a story to tell there. What's your prediction?
Well, and we have the Hung Bucks going around right now, right? So there's there's a lot. I don't think I can make an accurate prediction on it yet, but I think it'll be Kenny and the Bucks ultimately winning that. My heart wants it to be House of Black really bad. But I think it will be Kenny and the Bucks because I don't know. That seems like
Kenny and the Bucks.
For sure. It just feels like they also give fans what they want a lot of times, and I think a lot of people want that for a returning Kenny Omega.
Yeah, they said how many teams are we expecting in the tourney? 8. I mean, I could come up with 8 right off the top of my head, so sure.
Yeah, jeez.
Because like the thing is, they were planning on doing this like 2 years ago. This was the whole reason Death Triangle like existed, and I guess props to AEW for hanging on to Death Triangle this long. But I don't know. I would say Kenny and the Bucks feels like the smart pick, but also knowing that the Bucks weren't the first to win the tag titles tells me that they are very much okay with the idea of being the quintessential trio, but giving somebody else the victory. I would like to see, just because I don't see any other gold that they could all win. I would like to see it go to Best Friends. I don't see a scenario. I feel like Orange Cassidy at this stage has earned a title in AEW. Sure. But like, what title is he ever going to get? I feel like the Best Friends have at this stage kind of earned a title, but if you look at the landscape, what titles are they going to get? I would say, like, to me, I would go Best Friends.
Sure.
That's my trio. And and then I would love to see the people who hate Orange Cassidy's just heads explode.
Cry. Yeah.
That'd be great too. But yes, give me Best Friends. That's what I want. Anyway, Kate, you have just given me the longest episode of Day After Dynamite yet.
Story of my life.
I hope you know that.
That's not a trademark I want, but it's one that I have now.
No, this was great though, and the thing is, people like longer shows.
Yes, they do.
I recognize that. I have
because we don't have video packages in our shows. Well,
that's it. I do have to tell people that longer shows aren't going to be all that doable in the future because the school year starting back up really soon, and I have to
3
pick up my
o'clock
kids.
is prime time. Yeah.
Had this been a show during the school year, I would have had to abruptly end this 30 minutes ago to go pick up my kids. So just know, school year coming up. As a matter of
I'll
fact,
never be invited back.
13.
I'm cool from June to August. You can invite me back on there, but
13 more days and school starts.
my goodness.
That's it. I have a 6th grader. I have a
Whoa.
middle schooler. What the hell?
My God.
Folks, where can we find Kate?
Oh God. It's literally a week of shows for me coming up. So you've got me on AEW Rampage and SmackDown Review tomorrow. You've got me on SummerSlam behind the Fightful paywall on Saturday, Ric Flair's last match, and the Raw after SummerSlam post shows on the regular Fightful YouTube. Tuesday back with Sour Graps. Wednesday at the Mark Order Pod, and then Thursday I'm taking a real long nap. But you can find all that information at Miss Kate Fabe on Twitter and TikTok, and Katestagrams on Instagram.
Yep. For Kate, I'm Will Washington. We will see you next time. Side note. In case you weren't already aware because you weren't following us on Twitter. Folks, there's no Grapsity this Saturday. It's on Sunday this week. So bring your Sunday best because we're going to bring our Sunday best. And we're going to talk about it after SummerSlam rather than before. So Grapsity will be on Sunday this week, not Saturday. Same time, same station. YouTube.com/Fightful. Anyway, I'm Will Washington. She's Kate. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Peace.